Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim, and Chris. On today's French Open round two catch up,
Sinner sinks Gasquet in his final tennis match.
Swiatek rolls through Raducanu again.
And Norrie sets up a round three battle of the Brits with Jacob Fearnley.
Kim, today is the 29th of May, and we are here to catch up on round two of the French Open at Tennis Weekly HQ, brought to you by Property Hub Invest. As we speak, Jack Draper and Gael Monfils are possibly entering a fifth set. They're at the very end of a fourth set. We're sort of wondering which way it is going to go. Iga Swiatek has rolled through Emma Raducanu again. I thought it was going to be closer than their affair at the Australian Open. It was not. And we have a Battle of the Brits set up for round three. An intriguing Battle of the Brits. Cam Norrie versus Jacob Fearnley. Elsewhere, Novak Djokovic won today. Barbora Krejcikova is out. Alex de Minaur out in 5 sets to Alexander Bublik. Alexander Bublik doing Alexander Bublik things. So lots and lots to speak. And as I say, that big result, Swiatek Raducanu, we're going to be getting onto that and all the play from yesterday in the second half. But Kim, Jack Draper, are we how nervous are we feeling right now?
Well, it's been an entertaining affair, I have to say, and it still could go to a fifth. Jack Draper is serving for the match in the fourth set as we speak. He's just broken Gael Monfils. It's a cracking match. Chris is there watching, and it's fantastic for him to experience this. It doesn't really get much better, does it? Gael Monfils, night session, Roland-Garros, the crowd, the atmosphere.
It's so funny because the night session at Roland-Garros at times, I sort of wonder, is it the worst ticket in tennis? Like some of the matches, they're just not that compelling. You get one match, if it's straight sets, it's a bit rubbish. It starts late and you go home. But when you do get a matchup like Draper Monfils kind of early on in the tournament, and that is in the night session, it does show, I think, that it can work, but
yes,
it just doesn't feel like it's happened enough for me to think, oh, this is just a money grab by the French Open organisers.
Yeah, if it was like Draper Monfils every night, I think you think fair play, this is worth it. I can see the appeal, but I like how you described it as, oh, it starts late and you go home. Don't work in the marketing for the French Tennis Federation with that. But no, and also breaking news, Jack Draper has just won. So there's no fifth set tonight for the crowds at Philippe-Chatrier. But yeah, good that Jack Draper has made it a trio of British men into the third round at Roland-Garros, in contrast to the British ladies who have all gone home, which we'll get onto shortly.
Our Roland-Garros coverage is brought to you by Property Hub Invest.
If you're looking to build a successful property portfolio without the stress of going it alone, Property Hub Invest could be exactly what you need.
With over 13 years of experience and trusted by the Sunday Times as weekly property columnists, the team behind Property Hub Invest have helped thousands of investors build hands-off, high-performing portfolios.
They source buy-to-let opportunities you won't find anywhere else, complete with exclusive investor discounts, then guide you through every step so you can invest with confidence and grow your wealth the smart way.
So if you're serious about property, head to propertyhub.net/start to take your first step.
That's propertyhub.net/start.
The link is in the description.
We do have to issue, I think, before we get on to the bulk of our round two catch up, a slight apology, don't we?
We do.
Certain
I do. Yes, I have to hold my hand up here because I was fooled into some fake news I saw on social media in our round one catch up because I saw an image that was, I thought, from Qwinwen Zheng's Instagram stories referencing the Navarro thrashing because they have a little beef, a little bit of ongoing history with each other. Well, it turns out that was a fake image. There was no continued beef from Qwinwen Zheng. So listeners, forget I said that. Apologies to Qwinwen Zheng. Apologies to our listeners. But yeah, that did not happen.
I did think it was a bit mean of her. So I also apologize for thinking badly that she would do that. And we should think better of people and check our sources. We got done, so apologies. Let's hope that everything else we talk about is legit. I'm sure it is. We've got some legit results that have actually happened that are very much real and valid, though, haven't we, Joel, to talk through today?
Well, let's talk about the Jack Draper match. It's just happened. Chris is there. And listeners, we are going to be doing don't worry, there is going to be another tennis weekly journal from Chris and Alina, which is going to go out tomorrow. Chris is right there at the match as we speak. So he is going to be going to press. I believe we're going to hear from Jack Draper in that journal, and he's going to get into a bit of a deep dive on the match. But Kim, instant reactions of the result. Draper winning in 4 sets against Monfils. I mean, he was set point down. It looked like a 5th set was on the cards.
I have to say, I think if it went 5, I still would have backed Jack Draper. I think despite the crowd, and Monfils and his energy and what he brings to the court, his dynamism, I do think that Draper would still have come through. I was sort of still confident, which is unusual for being a British tennis fan. But I don't know, Draper gives me more confidence than maybe other players. I think it's lovely that Monfils has had this, and it was an entertaining match. I think in a way I wanted both players to win because they're both players that I want to do well. And Monfils, age 38, it's just so great to see him lighting up the tennis court like he did on Tuesday night as well. And it's a shame to see him go, but I'm pleased that Draper's made it through, and he'll face João Fonseca in the next round, which I think could be another entertaining clash because a lot is being said about the young Brazilian. I don't think that'll be a walk in the park, and I think Jack's had some early battles, hasn't he? He's dropped a set in both of his openers now. But hopefully that will help him be a bit more battle hardened for what Fonseca brings on. Do you think
Saturday. He's going to need to? Do you think he's going to need to raise his level a touch for Fonseca? I mean, he kind of cruised through today in straight sets, but do you feel like Draper's level at the moment? Do you think that is enough to take care of Fonseca, or do you think he's going to need to find another gear?
I think with these sorts of events, you sort of progress gradually as it goes through, doesn't it? And I think he's doing enough at the moment, but I think it might be his trickiest test yet. But I think we've got to remember that although Jack is number 5 in the world, he's coming in quite a different player to last year.
Yeah.
He'd never won a match at Roland-Garros.
That's very
before.
true.
He's now won 2. So I don't.
We have such high expectations. I know. It's like, well done. You've won your first match at the French Open. Now go and make the semi-finals.
Progress, not perfection. I think we need to remember that. And Fonseca isn't just a sort of ordinary unseeded player. There is big things predicted for him. So it's going to be an interesting one. But I do think Jack can come through it. I think he's still playing well enough. It's just, I hope tonight hasn't sort of knackered him out too much, and maybe he's, on a bit later on the Saturday and not first thing. But he's got a day to repair and recover. Monfils, I don't know how much longer we're going to see him, on the tour. I hope for much longer, but one of his, compatriots, Richard Gasquet, he's gone. He's out. He's retired as of today. He lost earlier on Chatrier to Jannik Sinner in a very one-sided affair, 6-3, 6-love, 6-4 for the world number 1. Very, comfortable really for Sinner. But I suppose the main story here is Richard Gasquet's career has come to an end. And age 38, he's bowing down and hanging up his rackets. And a bit of a sad day for French tennis and I guess the tennis players of our generation and our era, Joel, that we sort of have known sort of all the way through their career from when they first started, the sort of Andy Murray, Rafa generation, Gasquet was very much part of.
Yeah, I mean, 1,018 pro matches in his career. That is incredible longevity. And he has been really, I think, a rock of French tennis. I think, there are players who may have kind of peaked higher than him, like a Jo-Wilfried Tsonga, for example. But I do think that he has been kind of the constant kind of presence, and it's admirable. He's been able to kind of perform at this level for so long. He's battled so many things, injuries, controversies, to kind of see him, where he is now and still be able to kind of bow out in a match against the top seed. I mean, that, to be honest, is probably as perfect as it is going to get for him in terms of coming into the tournament. So I think it's a very nice way. It's a very fitting send off, for Gasquet. And I think it's a time that, we can look back on all the memories that he's left us and the legacy as well, because I think the whole kind of fascination with single-handed backhands, I mean, a lot will maybe look at Roger Federer as one of the reasons for that. But I think Richard Gasquet is another reason why, tennis players growing up want to still play with a single-handed backhand, because Richard Gasquet, he just makes it look so damn cool.
Yeah, he's very stylish with his single-handed backhand, and definitely the shot that you instantly think of when his name is mentioned. And it wouldn't have been the same if he hadn't have had it. If he just I don't know, had a regular double-handed backhand, it doesn't, it goes so well with him and what we know about him, and it will be missed. It's fair to say. And he's been such a pinnacle of French tennis for so long. He's actually won more matches in the Open era than any other Frenchman, which I think is crazy. I would never have thought that was a statistic, but 610 matches he has won. It's a record for Frenchmen. And he first played at Roland-Garros in 2002, losing to Albert Costa in the first round. And 23 years later, I should say, actually, he, is back on Philippe-Chatrier playing, the world number one. So I think it's worked out quite nicely, actually, that he's been able to play on this court in his final match. And, I think the loss is pretty much inevitable given the way Sinner's playing, but it's fitting end to, a good career. It could have been better career.
Do you think?
To do greater things, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, there's a news story going around from Tennis Magazine in 1996, which has a photograph of 9-year-old Richard Gasquet, and the headline in French reads, "The champion that France awaits?" ? Kim, you sort of hinted, did he live up to his full potential? How do you think the French media see Richard Gasquet, and do you think there are no stones left unturned in his career, or do you think there are some what if moments for him?
I think in a way that magazine didn't do him any favors, because it did set this pathway and scene for him that he never quite lived up to it. Maybe there was always therefore a sense of disappointment. It's very hard for me. I'm not, French speaker. I don't know how the sentiment is within France and the French audience, but statistically, he got to a high of 7 in the world. He got to 3 Grand Slam semi-finals. He won 16 titles on the ATP tour. That's a great career for more than most players could maybe dream of. But I think that article, so early in his life, really, it probably put the pressure on. And I think we did see that he didn't quite handle that, especially at Roland-Garros and with the French media pressing down on him. And we've seen that with British players at Wimbledon. It's been very hard to cope with, and I think there's a danger with those sorts of proclamations so early on, a bit like the Caroline Garcia world number one thing from Andy Murray. It's like, maybe we shouldn't go make these bold statements, because is it actually helpful to people? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that era Gasquet was playing in, I always remember talking about French tennis similar, I think, to Italian men's tennis now. It just felt like they had so many players in the top 100. Granted, Italian tennis has Jannik Sinner as the world number one, but it didn't necessarily feel like French tennis had a champion like a Great Britain, who may not have had the numbers but had an Andy Murray. So maybe they felt like there was an expectation that Gasquet, as good as he was and as high up the rankings, maybe they did feel that he was a Grand Slam champion. But maybe that's just the pressure of French tennis. I mean, what are your lasting memories of Richard Gasquet on the tennis court?
I mean, this is going to sound really British centered. But when I first think of Richard Gasquet, I think of Andy Murray's arm in that classic 2008 match they played at Wimbledon. Murray coming back from 2 sets down. we all saw, him flex the arm, and it's the roar of the crowd. That is where my brain goes, the visual that I see, which is bad because that's very much Andy Murray memory more than a Richard Gasquet memory, but that's what instantly comes to my mind. But Joel, do you have one that's slightly more, complimentary to Gasquet?
Well, first of all, I always remember that match, but I always also remember their first round encounter at the French Open in 2010 when Murray won in 5 sets. It's funny how their careers have had some truly epic matches together, both, home and away. One other match as well I always remember watching on TV was when he kind of broke onto the scene. He defeated Roger Federer at Monte Carlo. And I just remember there was a lot of buzz about this player, but not really much was known about him. And I was watching this match, thinking kind of, who is this guy? And, watching this single-handed backhand from this, player against, who one of the kind of greatest in the game at that moment. And it was just so impressive. And I think just one of the last things I'll say on Richard Gasquet, one of the things that's been so impressive is how he has been able to compete despite, physically maybe not being the biggest guy, having the biggest serve, being able to rely on, one big shot or one big weapon to get, to earn a lot of free points, sort of similar to kind of, I think, like a David Goff. I think that's why he's so beautiful and elegant to watch at time, because you need to think about the point construction, how he's working his opponent. And he certainly was one of the best, I think, of his generation of French players to do that. So, yeah, I think, given what he's given to tennis, it's a great send-off, incredible longevity, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes next. I feel like French media Fabrice Santoro route is on the cards.
Yeah, coaching, punditry, we will see. But we do bid adieu to Richard Gasquet. And another Frenchman we're bidding adieu to, although not for his career, just the tournament, is Corentin Moutet. He lost in straight sets to Novak Djokovic earlier on today. Again, quite a straightforward match for Djokovic.
Bit surprising when it involves Moutet. You're sort of expecting some sort of fireworks or interesting thing to talk about, but it was strangely kind of subdued and very underwhelming, I guess, from that perspective.
Yeah, he had a set point in the third, which he wasn't able to take. But the first 2 sets, I just felt that Corentin Moutet was just struggling to stay in it, really. It was, just Djokovic on the ascendancy all the time. And funnily enough, he's never lost to French players at Roland-Garros, has Djokovic. So it was never going to be possible for Moutet to get the win, given that statistic. But Djokovic is through to face Filip Misolic, who beat Shapovalov today as well. So Austrian qualifier awaits for Djokovic. He did lose to Jurgen Meltzer one year, didn't he, Djokovic? So maybe the Austrians aren't as lucky for him as the French. We'll see. But other men's results, talk about British players. Obviously, Draper has made it through. We've got 3 British players in the men's singles still. We've got Jacob Fearnley, who beat another French player, Ugo Humbert, earlier today, and Norrie, who beat Gomez, who was I think a lucky loser or qualifier. So Norrie won quite comfortably. It was, quite a different encounter to his match against Medvedev. He did what he had to do nicely. But Jacob Fearnley, this was the match that I thought, this is going to be quite tricky for him. Humbert, number 22 seed of playing at home. But, I mean, Fearnley got the first set, but Humbert had a nasty fall in the second set and had to retire. And he just couldn't carry on. So bit of luck for the Brit there. We don't know what would have happened had Humbert been fit and able to carry on.
It's quite a pivotal moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he tried to play on, got a medical timeout, but it just he looked like he was really suffering when he fell over on the baseline and just not able to carry on. So a real shame. He's not had a great clay court season, has Humbert. He broke one of his fingers earlier in the clay season, and now, you're falling over here at Roland-Garros at your home tournament. It's not what you want. But it does mean we have a Fearnley-Norrie all-British encounter in the third round. which the winner of which is likely to play Novak Djokovic. So a lot to play for.
Yeah, an intriguing matchup, and maybe one we weren't necessarily expecting kind of coming into the French Open, but I'm all here for it. And it's, I think, got quite an interesting background because, there's a real battle, I think, for the British number 2 position in that kind of supporting role to Jack Draper. It's, I feel like with Fearnley, at the moment, but Norrie is certainly climbing back up the rankings and showing a lot of kind of fight in him. I've been really impressed with this kind of attitude, his energy, his results in Geneva. It makes me sort of kind of curious of a rematch with Djokovic, because it was so closely fought in those first 2 sets in the Geneva semis. So I'd be curious to see if that happened again, but Fearnley's not going to be any sort of pushover. And I think there's going to be motivation there in terms of kind of showing who is kind of the true British number 2 at the moment.
Yeah, I'm going with Cameron Norrie for this one. I think he's just got that slight extra edge of experience at a Grand Slam. And I've just had a feeling about Norrie. So since before the tournament, obviously helped by his semi-final appearance in Geneva. It'd be great if he could have another crack at Djokovic. But then likewise, it would be great for Fearnley to have another crack at Djokovic. Like you said, it was close when they played before. So obviously happy for either of them.
Close at Wimbledon last year. So, we can be optimistic, I think, either, possibly either way, assuming, Djokovic gets through as well.
Yes. But yeah, guaranteed a Brit in round 4, which is fantastic. We can't say it's the same for the women though, because obviously Emma Raducanu is out, which we'll get onto in the second half, but Katie Boulter and Sonny Cartel losing today, meaning
Katie Boulter no more.
Katie Boulter is no more. Yeah, she lost quite comfortably to Madison Keys. A lot of double faults. Not a great day on serve for Katie, and she acknowledged that quite rightfully afterwards. And Cartel, similar loss to Marie Buskova, who, has been around a while. She knows her way around a clay court. And Cartel not able to really compete today. But, it's not a bad effort. That they're not clay court specialists. Cartel had never played the French before. Katie Boulter, very inexperienced on clay, generally considering. So up against, tougher opponent. And we'll... let's see if they can get their clay game up and elevated for next year. But, it's, not all is lost. We've got 3 British men through to the 3rd round.
Indeed. And I think it will be interesting to see if they can kind of take this, positive momentum into the grass court season, because they're, they're playing well. And, grass, obviously, a kind of stronger surface, particularly for Boulter. So, I think it'll be interesting to see. I was a little bit disappointed, I think, a bit more with the Cartel Buskova result, because I thought Cartel maybe could have posed a few more problems there. But on to the grass for the women. I mean, just Kim, another couple of results to talk about. A couple of 5-setters, actually, because Alex de Minaur lost today. Katie
Not a great day.
No, they both went out at the same time for the tennis couple. But Alex de Minaur went out to Alexander Bublik in 5 sets. I don't know what I'm more shocked by. Alex de Minaur not being able to close it out against Alexander Bublik from 2 sets up, or Alexander Bublik getting his game face on, getting serious with tennis from 2 sets down to win in 5 and make the 3rd round for the first time.
Yeah, Alex de Minaur reached the quarterfinals here last year for the first time, and he was 6-2, 6-2 up against Bublik today. Quite comfortable, very focused, very on it. Bublik just seemed a bit lost, and then just a complete turnaround. And the final 3 sets, 4-3 and 2 to Bublik. So I think Alex de Minaur was just a bit flabbergasted, really. Just very much a match of 2 halves.
It's not a very Alex de Minaur scoreline, but it is a very Alexander Bublik scoreline.
Yeah, he definitely won out in more ways than one. So Bublik is through. But we have had a couple of 5-setters. Jakub Mensik out as well from 2 sets up to Henrique Rocha, who I think is about 200 in the world. I was expecting more from Jakub Mensik this tournament, and he's come a cropper from a qualifier who, yeah, I'm not sure if we say that the H in Enrique. Is it Henrique or Enrique? I'm not sure, but maybe, yeah, just one of the stories of the tournament coming through unexpectedly, and yeah, getting the upset there today as well. And Joel, I don't know if you saw much of Arthur Fils against Jaume Munar, because this also went 5. And the French crowd were loving this because obviously Fils is one of their home hopes. And yeah, Fils was 2 sets up, having won 2 tie breaks. And then
strange match.
Really
strange
struggling.
Match.
Yeah, struggling with his movement. Munar won the next 2 sets, 2 in love. And I thought, blimey, what on earth is going on here? But Fils battled through. He's obviously in quite a bit of pain. Not sure what's going on. A bit of a back injury, I think. Came through 6-4 in the 5th. Lives to fight another day. We'll face Andre Rublev next. So I'm not sure if, depending on the state of the injury, how much further he will go. But I have to admit, I did think at one time, I thought, could Jaume Munar be on a bit of a run here?
You dared
could
to
it be one Mallorcan has, had his retirement ceremony and another one comes through to take his place?
Well, not to be, but a good draw for Andrei Rublev, because he came through in straights and will face Fils next. So Fils with that back injury, Rublev is probably feeling quite optimistic about making the second week of a Grand Slam. And when you've got other contemporaries of him kind of falling in the first week, like Tsitsipas, Medvedev, Casper Ruud as well. For him to not kind of fall into that same trend, I think is very promising for him, because he's not necessarily showed too much form on the tour. Been also going on a little bit of a slide down the rankings. So, really good opportunity for him.
Yes, and we do have a couple of other results from today on the ladies' side of things. I was particularly intrigued to see.
Did Coco Gauff bring her tennis rackets to her match? That's the big question.
She did. She turned up with her racket, so all is well, and she won quite comfortably against Valentova, who didn't really challenge her too much. I think Gauff failed to serve for it the first time, but yeah, got the job done 2 and 4 with rackets in tow. But for me, one of the most intriguing matches was Sofia Kenin against Victoria Azarenka, 2 former Slam champions. And Kenin getting the better of Azarenka in straight sets, which, this is a match I wanted almost like both of them to win. I'd like them both to have that kind of resurgence in their careers, but very pleased that Kenin, is having maybe a bit of a renaissance. I don't want to use that word again. I was very much reserved for Caroline Garcia a few years back, but she's back up to sort of 30 in the world now after being in the doldrums for so long, and into the 3rd round here. We'll see. She's got to play Madison Keys next, but she's a former finalist here, Joel. Go further.
I had her in my predictions to go on a little bit of a run, and I was impressed with how she fought back in that first set against Azarenka, because she was 5-2 down, took it on a really tight tie break, and then continued that on in the second set. So Kenin is playing well, and to come up against Madison Keys, I really don't know where that one is heading. It's a very intriguing matchup that I think is quite gilt-edged, very 50-50.
Yes, we'll see. I mean, they are both American, Australian Open, one-time champions. So they've, in a way, got that in common, and I'm sure know each other quite well, being, both American players. So we'll see if Kenin can go any further, or if Madison Keys will put a stop to that as the higher ranked player. But yeah, well, let's have a look quickly for tomorrow's action. The second half will be yourself and Chris capturing all of the action from day 4, aka Wednesday at Roland-Garros, so the rest of round 2. But let's have a quick look at what is up tomorrow in the 3rd round, first day of play. We have got Sabalenka back in action against Danilovic, Quentin Halys, local French player, against Holger Rune, Jasmine Paolini against Stara Dubtsova, and then Damedumza Alcaraz as the night session on Chatrier. Suzanne Longlon, though, Musetti Navone, Christian Swiatek, Rybakina Ostapenko. Oh, think that's a good one.
Yeah.
And TFO Korda.
The ticket for Longland is better than the ticket for Chatrier.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. But Rybakina Ostapenko has got to be the match of the possibly match of the day tomorrow. I'm definitely curious to see how that progresses. I mean, Swiatek also in the match before, winners, will face off against each other. Swiatek, Christian. And then TFO Korda. I mean, Korda, swatted away Brooksby. I thought that was going to be a bit trickier than it turned out to be. Another All-American battle in the third round. So, two players again, not really had much to talk about, I think, in their season so far, but a really nice opportunity for both of them to make the second week.
Yeah, and Gigante, who beat Tsitsipas, is up against Shelton on, I presume, the third court. But that will be, interesting. Can he go any further, or will Shelton put a stop to it? Shelton didn't play his second round match because Gaston withdrew. So, it might be at a disadvantage there, perhaps. And also Victoria Boko, the Canadian sort of rising star, up against Qwinwen Zheng. Curious to see how she'll get on there. So maybe a few.
Should we do some predictions, Kim? There. Let's do some predictions though for Longland. We're going to park Chatrier.
Okay,
today.
We're not fussed about Chatrier.
We're not fussed, but let's go with Longland. Right, you know the drill. Name, number of sets. Musetti, Navoni.
Musetti in 4. Musetti has been winning quite nicely.
Yeah, he has. I'm going to say Musetti in 3. Okay. Christian Swiatek.
I think Swiatek's going to maybe open a bakery and win quite comfortably, actually.
Yeah, Swiatek in 2 as well. Rybakina Ostapenko.
Oh, Rybakina in 3.
Ostapenko in 3.
Oh,
that's against the form book, I think. But yes, I'm going Ostapenko in 3. And finally, TFO Korda.
Korda in 4? That's tricky.
I'm going to go TFO in 5.
Oh, anything can happen.
Anything can happen.
Absolutely. Well, before we go for a break, just a reminder, the latest and final Tennis Weekly Journal will be also being released, I think, tomorrow. So that's Friday. And it's a special one, as we mentioned earlier, Jack Draper and Gael Monfils, all the fallout from that, which has just happened as we're recording tonight. We'll be able to hear from Jack Draper after the match. And if you haven't already gone and listened to the Tennis Weekly Journals with Chris and Alina, do to get further insight from behind the scenes at Roland-Garros. And let's take a very quick break now, but do join Joel and Chris in the second half, where they'll be discussing day 4 from Roland-Garros, including Iga Swiatek's dominant win over Emma Raducanu. So do not go anywhere.
Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, brought to you by Property Hub Invest. And it's time now to look back on day 4. But before we do, we looked at our collector set picks, me and Kim, in our round 1 episode. Chris, you're here. It's your first round by round episode. So we need to now do the honors and reveal your predictions for collector set. I'll just give a recall of all the names. We've got Sinner, Djokovic, Ruud, Swiatek, Mira Andreeva, and Madison Keys. So without further ado, what were your predictions?
Well, I don't think this is fair because some of them have already gone wrong, I think.
Hey,
potentially.
I've already got one that's gone wrong in a big way as well.
Okay, that's fine, because I think when you announce them early, it's okay because they haven't gone out yet. But
well, to be fair, we've actually all had a bit of a clanger because Kim had round 1 Madison Keys.
That is particularly bad. Okay, I feel better now. I did not do anything quite that bad.
Yeah, therapy session is in play.
I went for Novak Djokovic making the 4th round because I thought Medvedev was going to take him out, but obviously that didn't happen. My semi-finalist. I had Casper making the quarterfinals. Didn't happen in the end. Iga, I thought, was being taken out by Marta Kostyuk, who went out in round 1. Andreeva, I could be on for a quarterfinal. And Keys, I don't want to not root for Katie Boulter, but I've said round 3. So we're not doing our best. Let's hope that our listeners are doing a bit better than we are so far.
Yeah, I had round 2 Iga Swiatek. I was so in on the Emma Raducanu hype train. I got swept in. We're going to be getting more into that match in the second half because you were there for it.
Yes.
But yeah, it was not to be.
It was pretty
and
flat. Yeah.
I've fallen on.
Fallen to the Emma Raducanu hype train.
Yes, exactly.
Victim.
But
yes.
I just know it'll happen again. It's going to happen again in the future.
We will. We'll never learn.
Right. But we'll keep listeners up to date on how collector set progresses. Not looking good for us. Maybe it's looking good for some of our listeners. We'll have to wait and see. But let's look back now on day 4 action at Roland-Garros. And we're going to start, Chris, with another match you were at. Carlos Alcaraz versus Fabian Marozsan. Alcaraz coming through with a little bit of a blip, 4 sets, 6-1, 4-6, 6-1, 6-2. What did you make of this match? Because it's quite an interesting setup with that win that Marozsan had over Alcaraz in Rome a couple of years ago. Were you ever worried for Alcaraz with that second set blip?
I don't think I was worried because we've seen this before. I think last year that match against De Jong, he really made that look quite difficult. So we aren't necessarily surprised when some of the top players maybe lose a set along the way. I think Djokovic always has a habit of doing that. And even Sinner has lost a few sets to some surprising players over the last couple of years when you wouldn't have thought that would happen. I think, was one of them Mackenzie McDonald? Was that, to make that up at the US Open? Or there was a strange one that happened. So I'm focusing more on the sets that he dominated. And I think he just had a loss of focus, really. I think he does do that sometimes. And I said to Alina when we went on to watch that match that he's much better to watch when he's playing against a good player. I'm not saying Marozsan is not a good player, but when he's playing like top 10 players, I think that's when you see him play his best and he almost plays the level he needs to win. It wasn't necessarily flawless throughout, but the sets he did win, I mean, they were pretty flawless, to be honest.
Why do you think, Alcaraz had, that loss of concentration? And is that going to be a worry? I mean, I think that's one of the beauties of best of 5 set tennis is that you do need to stay dialed in for as long as possible because matches do ebb and flow. But is that a concern? I always feel like Alcaraz, he actually tends, I feel like, to start off a little bit more scratchily and is more maybe vulnerable to, a first set dip. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that can happen to him quite a lot. The nature of 5 sets, though, if you're someone who's very physically capable and has a lot of confidence in their own ability and knows that they can win it in the end, it does sort of make me think that you have that extra buffer. You've got more time to win it if you're not playing that well. I mean, on break points, though, he did only take 8 of 17. So I don't think he really should have lost that second set. He did have chances to not lose it. He's just not necessarily converting some of those points where he would want to. Very strange, that sort of number. You don't expect to have 17 break points in such a short match and have to convert it like less than half of them. It does happen to him. So that's something he's always got to make sure that he keeps in check because even last year in the final against Zverev, there were ups and downs. It ebbs, it flows.
Yeah.
And he does tend to get the win, even if it's not always pretty throughout.
Yeah, and I think one thing for Alcaraz, he always finishes strongly. That's one of the kind of the best aspects of his game. And he's become the first player born in the 2000s to earn 20 match wins at Roland-Garros. Incredible achievement. 9th win in a row as well. So he's kept up the streak. But Chris, the one thing I'm worried about, maybe is the biggest opponent to the streak for the superstitious people like myself, is his haircut, because he showed off a fresh barnet for round 2. Getting a haircut in between rounds, that would raise my eyebrow. But his haircut itself also raises my eyebrow because I don't think it's a great look.
I would say it's questionable.
Is this just like a? I don't know. I mean, I'm saying this like, I mean, we're doing a video episode. My hair is all over the shop right now.
I would say your hair looks better than this, Joel. I think you've gone a bit more traditional, a bit more classic in your approach. It is quite pointy, I would say, and it's very, very faded at the back. I have seen some shots from behind that fans have zoomed in on, and they did say it is a bit lopsided. So for his barber, it's not necessarily the best ad for him. But Jack Draper actually has also had his hair done by the same barber. So there's a trend going. I think this is when we saw some really strange haircuts for Jack. Maybe Alcaraz gave him the number for this haircut. But I mean, with the outfit, I do think it kind of works. I quite like this sort of like sharp, very high contrast, between the light and the dark sort of pointy hair. There's a straight line there, Joel.
It sort of looks like an arrow pointing to the Nike logo on the back of his shirt.
Yeah, or like a triangle, I think it feels like it's still keeping in that sort of stripe pattern that he has on his shirt. So better in person is my verdict, but not necessarily one I'd recommend you getting.
Yeah, I've kind of classed it the wonky fade. The wonky
fade. And Joel, you're
so maybe
facing forwards. So if you did get a wonky fade, we'd never know.
Maybe in the future, maybe if it cottons on, I'll try it. But we'll have to see how Carlos Alcaraz progresses. I mean, to be honest, Chris, he arguably is one of the biggest winners of today because, Taylor Fritz has gone out, Casper Ruud has gone out. It's Pericard, who he was meant to be facing, according to the seeds next round, he went out. Like, his draw has opened up a lot. And, we spoke about kind of Casper Ruud, and he's had a good clay season, had that victory in Madrid in the final over Jack Draper. But sadly, he had to retire today against Nuno Borges of Portugal. 2-6, 6-4, 6-1, 6-love to Borges. Now, you're at this match as well. What was the story? Because it started off very well for Casper Ruud.
It did. It really did. I thought he looked really solid. He looked really engaged. I'd already started writing my questions about him winning because we requested to speak to him.
There we go. That's where it all went wrong.
I also drafted an Emma Raducanu tweet, and she did win round one. So
after those break points in like the first game,
it's like this is going to be a contest. I did not post that tweet though. No, it was quite a surprise because he'd been in such good form. Obviously, that match against Sinner was a strange one. He didn't seem to kind of give too much credence to the fact that he did lose love and won. And no one was really questioning after his first round match that he would come through this, given the fact that Borges had such a long match, such a late night. Everyone thought this would be the perfect matchup.
Yeah.
He didn't look like he was sliding that much. That was something that Alina spotted because I said, get a good picture of Casper sliding. And he wasn't really doing it. He was very, very cautious on some of the movements. So it does make us think that he was potentially injured. And it did make a lot more sense because there's a knee injury that he says he's been carrying actually for a significant period of time. And actually, he said that even prior to winning in Madrid, it was a problem. And it was fluid around his knee, came up, I think, on the scans. He's been taking like anti-inflammatories, but he decided that he was going to play the clay season with it, won Madrid, and then obviously now it's actually at the worst possible time at the French Open where it hasn't worked out for him. And he's had to actually, well, he didn't retire, but he wasn't competitive in those last two sets.
Yeah, and there were some comments after the match where he called out the ATP and the ranking system, describing it as a rat race. And basically he said, you feel like you're obligated to play with certain rules that the ATP have set up with the mandatory events. And he was sort of suggesting that players are being forced effectively to kind of work hurt or work injured, play injured in these tournaments. Do you think that's an issue with the kind of the scheduling and the kind of the non-stop nature of the scheduling and these kind of extra rules maybe in place kind of are forcing players to kind of tag along even though it might not necessarily be what their body wants?
I guess my question would be, what are the genuine repercussions? He talked about ranking points, and obviously that's something he says very significant to him, but these players earn a lot of money, they've got a lot of sponsorship. And there are ranking penalties if you don't play these tournaments because then other tournaments won't count towards your ranking. But I mean, if you're winning big on the tour, it doesn't really matter. You can still, to a certain degree, pick and choose. Or if you're injured, it's never recommended necessarily that you would play through it. I think with a lot of players who are more lowly ranked, I read a really interesting article once about the importance of medical tape and the fact that it meant that they could potentially play another match that could get them the ranking points or the win that they needed to get the prize money. So small things do make a big difference. Casper's in a bit of a different camp there because he is very successful on the tour. He makes a lot of money. He has had success even when he has been injured, which shows the advantage of playing injured if you can manage it. But at the same time, I mean, if you're winning a tournament like Madrid injured, it doesn't necessarily make me think that this is a very significant injury. So probably it's just very frustrating for him. And those comments might not be the most considered he's ever been in this, because, I mean, not many people are complaining about the fact they have to play the mandatory Masters. It could be the length of the Masters that could be quite, it takes up, you don't get a week off. I think that might be something this is connected to.
Yeah, and I think for him, I feel like his as a player, his season is almost kind of fixated around the French Open. It's always kind of feels like it's building up to this point. It's a big part of the season, for him, given his previous successes.
2 finals, a semi-final. I was going to ask you, Joel, are we going to see him on the grass? It sounds like we're not going to.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, he said it. He said this injury is hopefully nothing too serious, but it sounds like grass is for golf. Maybe he's not going to be able to get some golf practice in at the moment. He might just be having his feet up because and sort of maybe taking a rest. But to be honest, I can see it a lot more now with the scheduling. And I know kind of a few seasons ago when these kind of comments came out around Ruud and his approach to the grass court season, I know we all sort of laughed, but the calendar is getting to this point where I think players do need to strategically take a time out. And for Casper Ruud, it's the grass court season, and it's a perfect time at the moment for him to go away, recharge his batteries, nurse his knee injury, and come back fighting for the hard court season.
I mean, he hasn't got points to defend. He lost, I think, Fognini, was it, at Wimbledon last year? I was pulling my hair out at that one. So it makes sense. I do think it's about doing like a Serena or even a Djokovic, where you play the tournaments when you're fit and you're able to. You can play your way into the tournaments and try and peak at the slams. I think he talked about the hamster wheel that is tennis, and he felt like you said, we just said rat race. I think he's using a lot of these analogies at the moment when he opens up about sort of his mental health side of things. And it does make me think that if you are always on the wheel and you're playing these 250s and adding these dates to your calendar, I mean, he did pull out of Geneva, but he's a player who has played a lot. So I think some of those tournaments aren't mandatory. 250s are not mandatory. And he is playing less of them. But at the same time, I think you can't really complain that you have to play the Masters when you also want to have your cake and eat it on the 250 tour.
Well, another top seed that went out, Stefanos Tsitsipas, was defeated by the Italian qualifier Matteo Gigante. 4 sets, 6-4, 5-7, 6-2, 6-4 to the Italian. Tsitsipas is going to be outside the top 20 for the first time since 2018, Chris, with this result. He's only won twice in his last 4 Grand Slams. He's not having a good time of it at the moment. And similar to Ruud, the French Open for Tsitsipas is a place where he has great memories, been to a French Open final, arguably, was very close to a title, in that match against Novak Djokovic when he went 2 sets up, lost in 5.
Yes.
What is going on with Tsitsipas this season? Because he won that title in Dubai. There was all that chat around his new racket, and it was having this great instant impact. But we sort of gotten back into the old ways here.
Well, I mean, a racket can't change what's between the ears, unfortunately. And I think there's always going to be that sort of issue when his family are so involved in his tennis. It does mean that we've seen it before, that it's not always helpful. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he's enjoying his time on the court because of some of the interactions that you do see. So I do think it's probably a mental thing, because we know he has the talent level, and maybe it's a motivation thing as well, because he's been doing it a long time. He did come up as a young player with so much talent. And I think, as you say, like, if you never get off the wheel, you don't necessarily have those experiences outside of tennis that maybe would help you to kind of get that perspective.
It doesn't give you the time to improve your game as well.
He didn't make the changes, though, I think was a big thing. He didn't make the change to the backhand when he was kind of on his way up to peak. And I think if he had done that, then he wouldn't necessarily have such like a big weakness that so many players are aware of, with the fact that on that backhand return, he can't do a great deal and how much he was shanking some of those shots. I mean, it's like Federer, where it took him a long time to change his racket in that respect, but Federer was always looking at ways he could adapt his game as he got a bit more mature as well. So I think it's a tricky one. He's going to have to fix more than just his racket. I think that's clear. There's talk about, a new coach, but I think we should say before we kind of get into that take nothing away from his opponent. It was a phenomenal effort. And we actually saw him in qualifying. We popped into qualies to watch him play against, it was a Dane, Elmer Moller, who was playing against him, who then gave Tommy Paul a good go in the first round. So he's been in some good form. He won a challenger title, and he seems like an absolutely lovely chap in his interview. So he's making the most of the opportunity. And
I loved his speech on court afterwards. It was very Italian, very emotive, very expressive. I did catch some of the highlights. I did love he was going to the drop shot quite a bit, and it was he was playing very above his ranking, because he is a player who is sort of under the surface on the challenger circuit a lot. But come to this stage on a clay court, he's still a very dangerous opponent.
Very dangerous. And I also should mention it was very windy today. I think that was a big factor in the Raducanu-Swiatek match that we'll talk about in a bit. And Tsitsipas in the wind, I'm not sure it's the best for him either.
I mean, the forehand just felt so impacted. I know we talk a lot about the backhand, but today it was
really windy. It was. So I think the more balls you get back in court, the more chance there would be of there being an error. So some players aren't great in the wind, and some players are great on a clay court and great at making it very hard for you to play the tennis you want to, especially in those conditions. And I think that's probably what happened here.
Are you more surprised by the kind of slide in the rankings by Tsitsipas or Medvedev more? Because, they're two players who, a few years ago, they were at the peak of their games. We thought they were going to be here for, forever at the top. But they're both kind of in a bit of a funk at the moment. Which player are you more surprised by in terms of this slide down the rankings?
I think Tsitsipas is not as surprising to me. I think, as I said, there are problems in the team and technical issues that do need to be addressed that haven't ever really been addressed. And I think unless that changes, as I've said, I don't think it's necessarily going to be a case he's going to get himself back into the top five anytime soon. Medvedev, watching that match against Norrie, he was furious and he wasn't able to kind of calm himself to play the tennis he could play. Then he played it and I could not believe he lost it. I was there for that one, and that was unfathomable to me at that stage. And as you pointed out, Joel, that this has happened to him where he fights back and then he can't get over the line. And it just feels like this tug of war that's going on inside him. Yeah. It's so strange. And I mean, he hates clay anyway. He makes no sort of, he doesn't, he tells everyone that, and he told it quite explicitly in press.
He did.
He did, but it's just a strange one because these players are so good, but it does feel like there's some demons at work.
I know. Well, we'll have to see if they can rise up the rankings again. I mean, we saw Holger Rune having a little bit of a blip, and he's, seemingly on the way back as well. So, there are positive stories in the tour and players to look at that are going on the upward trajectory again. So we'll have to see. Goran Ivanisevic as well, possibly coming into the Tsitsipas camp post Roland-Garros. So if that does happen, that might also maybe add a little bit of new thinking into the Tsitsipas camp that maybe is missing at the moment. Can give him some direction that he very much needs.
Some outside influence is never a bad thing.
And looking at the women's results, Chris, we've got to talk, first of all, about Iga Swiatek versus Emma Raducanu.
Do we have to talk about it?
We're going to have to talk about it. I mean,
I'm ready to talk about it.
The time we are going to spend talking about it is probably, sadly, as much as this match lasted, because it was a very dominant performance by Swiatek. 6-1, 6-2. Raducanu did win 2 more games than she won in Australia, but I guess the positives really do end there. Before we talk about Raducanu, let's talk about Swiatek first, because she's got some interesting matchups potentially coming up. She could face Ostapenko, Nemesis Ostapenko in round 4, or it could be Rybakina, who has won a title in the lead up to the French Open, so is in form. But can we read too much into this result if you're a Swiatek fan? In terms of finding her confidence again, finding her mojo again in Paris?
I think she's been asked this a lot in the press room about how she feels here. Is it different here? Does this result, the result that we saw her beating Raducanu, does it really matter? She did celebrate it quite intensely, which made me think that it was a sign that she felt like she was coming back into form. But having been at that match, I don't think either of them played very well. I think there were quite a lot of errors, quite a lot of big errors. I think Iga was a lot tighter in terms of bringing those errors back in, and she got better as the match went on. But at the same time, I don't think that was the Iga Swiatek again that I've seen previously at the French Open. So I think it's improving. I think it will be really good for the confidence. I think the more matches, the deeper she gets, the more comfortable she'll feel, until it gets probably a bit later in the tournament when it can get, a bit, the pressure ramps up again. But I don't think she's celebrating yet, so I don't think that anyone else should really be celebrating yet.
Yeah, it was her 23rd consecutive match win at Roland-Garros. I think she's one off the record, so I don't know if that comes into it, or even if she's thinking about it.
Ostapenko, if she plays her, could stop her at the record, but can't stop her getting the record.
If that's true, I believe that will fire up Ostapenko.
Oh, that's exciting, isn't it? Add that to the dynamic.
Yes, but just talking about the sort of the matchup between the two. The way Raducanu plays, I've been reading a lot online about it's the complete opposite of what disrupts Swiatek. Big hitters from the back of the court, like a Danielle Collins or a Sabalenka, Madison Keys. Raducanu doesn't necessarily play with that weight of shot behind her, and it almost kind of helps Swiatek, get on top and dominate in her rallies. Do you feel like that's one of the things that counts against Raducanu in this rivalry?
I think the biggest issue is that she doesn't commit to the game plan that she has before she goes out. She said going into this match, she was going to have to bring her game to Swiatek, had to be more aggressive, and she wasn't aggressive at all. She got into these exchanges of just cross-court backhands, which makes no sense because that's the shot from Swiatek that's the least likely to break down. It's that forehand she pulls up on sometimes. So she wasn't applying the pressure. She wasn't stepping in really behind or stepping in to hit that second serve. And by the end of it, she was about 6 foot behind the baseline, returning the second serve of Iga Swiatek, which is not famously a fantastic shot. So it's almost like there's a disconnect between what needs to happen. And I always think there's the right and the wrong way to lose. And the right way to lose is to lose trying to play your game and at least giving it a go. You've got to go in and you've got to attack it. You can watch those matches she's lost.
What would you have liked to see then from Raducanu?
She needed to, like she did in the first game where she did get off to a good start in the first couple of games, you have to go after the return. You have to go line. You have to have the element of surprise. And she wasn't doing those things that she did so well when the US Open because she was taking on the big shot. And that's what Ostapenko does. That's what Rybakina does. You take on the big shot, and she didn't take it on enough. It was too low risk, but I do understand she does not like playing in the wind. She said previously at Eastbourne that she's very inflexible in those situations. So it just felt like she didn't try plan A because the conditions didn't allow her to. And it's just frustrating because you watch it and that she has
what's coming.
Yeah, but she also, she has the firepower. And it almost like she resigned to the fact that she would lose this match today.
Yeah, I questioned you on the firepower comment because I just felt at times where we did see that on hand, I think, at times, but I do wonder if she needs to add a little bit more speed, and maybe that's why her US Open results,
very comfortable ball she was giving Iga, not deep. It was very, very middle of the court. So I do think it was maybe the conditions, because when I saw her in her first round match, she was playing against a big hitter, and that was big hitting from Raducanu. So it's a bogey woman for her. It's now 5-0. And she believes that Iga plays her best tennis against her. And I have to say, this was not Iga's best tennis. So that's more worrying for Raducanu.
Yeah, she said that Swiatek is always fired up when she plays Raducanu. I would love to see them play on a fast US Open hardcourt or even at Wimbledon.
Court?
Yeah, Wimbledon I think would be a lot more equal. I do think, as I say, faster surfaces do suit Raducanu more than the clay, or even an indoor clay. Maybe we saw in Stuttgart, does work for her. But it does feel like that would help, because losing 69% of your points on second serve is quite a telling stat, I think. But good result for Swiatek. Harder, trickier test probably to come.
It's a tough draw. So Raducanu, Rybakina, and maybe Ostapenko.
Well, Christian next before we can get too excited. And Rybakina and Ostapenko have to face off against each other.
They've got to win. They've got to win to get there.
I mean, who do you favour in Rybakina Ostapenko? I mean, Ostapenko, classic Ostapenko. I think both her matches so far, 3 sets, wibbly wobbly. Gets it done in the end. Rybakina playing with a bit of confidence at the moment. Where do you think that could go? Or who would you like to see face Swiatek in round 4?
I've got Rybakina going pretty deep here, so I would love to see her. She's had a really tough year. There's been a lot of focus on her coaching relationship and situations there. So I was pleased she got through her first round and she's got some form again, because she's such a great player when she's playing well. And when Iga's been playing well and she's been playing well, she's been able to beat her. With Ostapenko, I think the patchiness of Ostapenko means that I'm not sure that I need to see her beat Iga again on a big stage. I think we've seen that a few times now. I'm not necessarily as excited by that. I'd be more excited if Rybakina could get herself back into the later stages of tournaments.
Okay, well, elsewhere we had on the other courts, we had Tommy Paul just about surviving again. His truck, I'm still hoping it hasn't been repossessed yet, because he came through against Fucsovics in a really tough 5-set match. I think I love about Tommy Paul is he makes you earn it, I think, when it comes to a victory against him. He just makes you play every single point to the last. And an impressive victory from him. And then Danielle Collins, Chris, I didn't realise this. Danielle Collins was defeated by Danilovic. And lightning strikes twice, because last year Danielle Collins lost to Danilovic in the French Open round 2.
Yes.
And it's the same time this year.
It is, and it was the exact place where Kim and I were recording last year. That was happening behind us, and I was so frustrated because Danielle had such a good run of form going into the French. But I mean, lightning does strike twice, as you say. It's quite shocking. I think a lot of people thought that Collins had some good form. She had a decent run in Strasbourg, and that she was kind of on the up. Didn't happen. But again, Danilovic is a good player. She made it deep here previously last year. So who's to say that she can't go further? But again, a surprising result. And then I also thought that Musetti on the outside course, and Simone Mathieu, he breezed through this morning. And so he's him over. He's
already kind of the biggest threat, I feel, to Alcaraz.
Definitely.
In his section. I mean, he's probably been one of the top 3 consistent clay quarters in the European clay swing so far, I think. So it feels more and more like that is nailed on, but we'll have to wait and see. We're going to wrap up, though, our round 2 catch up there at Tennis Weekly HQ. We hope you've enjoyed the ride with us. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss a moment of action from Roland-Garros. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all your favorite podcasting platforms out there. And if you love what you're hearing, then be sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube.
And if you'd like to keep following the action from Roland-Garros, do check out our social media. Alina and I have one more of our Tennis Weekly journals will be coming out. Joel, I won't make you have to say that. The intros have been so difficult, but maybe for the final you can do a little bit of French. Kim can lead that one.
Give me a bit
of
practice time.
Exactly. But if you'd like to follow us on social and see all of the behind the scenes of what we've been getting up to, we're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and X. And the handle for all of those is Tennis Weekly Pod. Also Threads. There's some lovely pictures that Alina's been taking. We've been posting to our Threads. It's a bit more arty over there, Joel, an arty Twitter. So you should get yourself on Threads as well. And if you'd like to drop us an email, you can ask us any questions that we can address, any questions you'd like Alina and I to address, and that would be at tennisweeklypod@gmail.com, or visit our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we'll be back on Saturday for our French Open round 3 catch-up, brought to you by Property Hub Invest. But until then, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Tennis Weekly.